As you look around your play area, you may often see small items that project out from the faces of walls, fences, and other pieces of play equipment. Common projections may include bolts, connectors, handlebars, pedals, and other similar features. While not all projections are a hazard, sometimes they can cause a hazard if they meet certain dimensions known to cause injury. If the projections are too long and too narrow, it can become what's known as a protrusion hazard. A protrusion hazard is capable of impaling or cutting a child if a child should fall or impact a protrusion. In addition, some protrusions can become what we call entanglement hazards because they are capable of catching strings or items of loose clothing worn around the neck. This type of hazard causes concerns related to potential strangulation. Let's take a closer look at some protrusion and entanglement hazards and the tools CPSIs utilize to determine if a projection is in fact a hazard. When certified playground safety inspectors are in the field, they use a number of tools to evaluate and inspect a playground like this one. Some of the tools they use are the protrusion and projection gauges. These are gauges that have a number of sizes and they represent different parts of a child's body. One is the smallest, which is the temple. There's an eye socket, which is represented by this circle, and then organ hazards, which is the largest. And what they do is they put these gauges simply over a projection to see if it protrudes above the face of the tool. Now they go through all three of these, and if it does project beyond that, they know it's a protrusion hazard, and you'd be labeled as non-compliant. One simple test that you can do in your play area to make sure that there's no projections that would cause a hazard is to simply run a string over the bolts or something that you think would project. That would be an entanglement hazard if it does fetch up. Some places to look for this is at the top of slides. That's one of the most vulnerable areas. If you have any questions, be sure to consult with your certified playground safety inspector. Another common element play inspectors look at, and you can look at too, are swings in the playground environment. Now when playground inspectors look at a swing, they have specific tolerances, especially when it comes to S-hooks like this one. You can easily test an S-hook like this simply with a dime. Take the dime, insert it into the S-hook on the end, and if the gap doesn't allow the dime to go through, then it's likely compliant. If the thickness does go through, you know these S-hooks need to be replaced. You also want to look at the swing chains to make sure there's no damage, and make sure there's no wear on the S-hook, and this one actually does have some. Make sure it's worn no more than a quarter through the S-hook. If it does, these are cheap to replace. You want to replace it as soon as possible. So as you can see, a full evaluation of your play area for protrusion and entanglement hazards can become complicated and may be best left to the professionals. However, you can do your part by keeping an eye out for some of the common protrusion hazards and knowing when something may look out of place or pose a threat. When doing your basic normal inspection of the play area, pay particular attention to bolts and fasteners which may have loosened or are backing out, as well as any new or broken pieces of equipment that may be protruding in the playground environment. Another common place to find potential protrusions hazards is along fences and related gates. We'll be discussing this a little bit more in Section 9. Just remember, common sense matters in preventing playground injuries. In the next section, we'll be discussing other common preventable hazards and what you can do to prevent them.